Okay, I want to start out by pointing out that causation is almost a philosophical concept that gets very deep, very tricky, and so I want to look at it in a concrete way that we can all relate with. And let's do that through cancer. So cancer is certainly something that we all want to avoid, and it'd be nice to know what the causes of cancer are, right? Because then presumably we would try to avoid most of them. But it's not easy to find that out. So I think this is the NIH, the National Cancer Institute, and I think they do a really nice job here of summing up the process. So they're saying it's usually not possible to know exactly why one person develops cancer and another doesn't. But we can, in terms of the population averages, we can start to get a sense for which things certainly are associated with cancer, and that's what we see here. So if we look at a large number of people who have cancer and ones that don't, and then look at all the different things they do, how much time they spend on their cell phone, how much they eat vegetables, do they exercise, do they live near a nuclear waste plant, all these kind of things, we can then find correlations. And we start to see patterns for the people that get cancer are more likely to have this happen, and the people who don't get cancer or who don't have it yet are more likely to have this. And these correlations are nice because they're hints, they're clues towards the actual cause. But they don't tell us exactly the cause because we don't know if those groups of people are different. And this potential difference between the groups, the people that have cancer and the people that don't in this case, is called selection bias. So if we were able to randomly assign people to two groups and then give, say, one group, give them lots of alcohol for 5 years, and the other group we did not allow them to have any alcohol for 5 years. I'm not sure how we would do that. But first of all, it wouldn't be ethical, especially if we're studying whether alcohol causes cancer. It wouldn't be ethical to force people in the treatment group to drink alcohol. But the nice thing about an experiment is because you have these two groups that have been randomly balanced, so because they were randomly assigned to treatment and control, on average, most of the variables will be balanced out in the two groups. There will be roughly the same proportion of females in one group as females in the other group. Roughly the same proportion of balding men in one group as balding men in the other group, and so on. Not exactly the same. It's random, so we don't get exactly a balance between the two groups, but enough that we're reasonably confident that most of the variables are balanced, except one, and that's the important one. It's the treatment. So in this case, it would be the alcohol. We know that everyone in that first group is drinking the alcohol, and everyone in the second group, presumably if we can control it, are not drinking alcohol. So at the end of the 5 years, if we notice a much higher cancer rate in the alcohol group, we can reasonably attribute that. Now, we can't be sure, of course, but we can reasonably attribute that to the alcohol because all the other potential causes, the groups were roughly balanced on. So the problem is that we can't often do that kind of experiment, and so we have to build up cases of evidence over different studies, and that's what this site discusses. And when several studies point to a similar association, increased risk, and so on, we end up with a set of risk factors that could cause cancer. In fact, as time goes on, we start to get very confident about certain substances, like, for example, smoking cigarettes, whereas for other things, there's some evidence, but even over time, it's not real convincing. So if I can go to another site here, this is the American Cancer Society site. What they do is they take all that research and they classify substances into 4 groups. So group 1 is definitely carcinogenic. They are, as sure can be, they are sure that these things do cause cancer. Group 2, A and B, Probably and possibly. So again, this is depending on how strong the effect sizes were, how many studies there were done, what the sample sizes were. They compiled that all together to create these classifying. Group 3, unclassifiable. For whatever reason, we're not able to pin it down using research. And group 4, probably not carcinogenic. Notice that they don't say not carcinogenic, because that would be a very difficult claim to support. So they make this, I guess, the mildest claim they can do, which is probably not. So if you have a group 4 substance, it's probably okay, especially if it's a substance that has been around for a while, because they probably would have picked it up if it's a serious risk for cancer. So what do these lists look like? Well, I mean, look at this. This is the group 1 list. All of these things right here. It might scare you if you read through these. These are all known things. Now, do all of these cause cancer in every person that comes across them? For example, let's look at wood dust. Think of all the carpenters. Will every carpenter get cancer if they're exposed to enough wood dust? No. But if you take a group of people and expose them all to wood dust on sustained level for a long period of time, then the average cancer rate will be higher in that group than if you hadn't exposed that entire group to wood dust. Now, we can't really compare that group to another group who's not exposed to wood dust, because the other group might be very different and might have other risk factors. But what we can say is for a given person or for a given group of people, their risk of cancer will be higher if they're extensively exposed to wood dust. And then we go down to the lower levels, 2A, 2B, and so on. So let me just close quickly with that idea of knowledge and power that we looked at in the overview video for the week. So when we go through the first stages and find these associations of different factors with cancer, this is knowledge. We're able to predict these risk factors. If there's even calculators, if you put in your age, whether or not, how much alcohol consumption you have, your diet, your exercise level, all these things, obesity level, we can tell you then what your risk factor of cancer is. That's a sense of knowledge. When it goes beyond that into causes, this is now power, because if we know what's causing the cancer, we don't just predict it for a person, we can actually change someone's cancer risk. Now, not all causes will allow us to do that. For example, age. Age is linked to cancer. We can't really do anything about that, but something like smoking, we certainly can. So knowing the cause potentially gives us the power to change that outcome or that effect that we're looking at. And of course, all of this applies to virtually any variable you can think of, not just incident of cancer. And certainly it applies to positive things such as happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction as well.